Welcome, pudding people. This is Ken Seymour, host of Everybody Loves Pudding. We're back with another tutorial for one of our neat tools on our website, the Ultimate Comic Movie Database. Now, this is kind of a teaser, a little sample of a tool that at the time of this recording, we're still in the process of putting together. That's going to be just amazing. But this already has so much functionality that could be potentially very interesting to you, the listener, that we hope that you will get some enjoyment out of this. Now, in using this tool, this is not intended to necessarily be used alone. This is intended to answer certain questions that you can't always get answered by looking online, or can't always trust that you will get the accurate answer when looking online in terms of films based on comic books, comic strips, and graphic novels. So that's what this database is. That is exactly what it talks about. And specifically, it is talking about live action variants of these particular productions. So we're not really covering anything that's animated, with the exception of an all CGI animation or a combination of live action and CGI. Those films are included in this database listing. So the whole purpose of the Ultimate Comic Movie Database, like I said, is to answer questions. Who has been in a comic book film? Is this a comic book film? What films came out at certain periods of time? So on our website, everybodylovespudding.com, all you have to do is click on the tab, the Comic Movie Database, and it brings you to the main page. You have a couple of informational links down to the right-hand side about the database fact. This will basically tell you what qualifies to be in this particular database and why. And it also gives a source list of where I got my information from. It is an evolving list, so it can change over time. Keep an eye on it, and it'll kind of tell you where I got our information from. It also gives a general list of some titles that are not included, that in some instances at the top that you might think, oh, that should be included, but it will give a reason why. For example, The Lone Ranger, you might think would be a comic book film, but it was not first a comic book film. It was a radio program that originated in 1933. So not originally a comic book, so not a comic book film. Or a comic strip film in this instance. So it goes through several instances of that and gives reasons why those films are not included. Now, this is not a complete list. Again, it is evolving and kind of goes as time goes along. At the bottom of the page, it gives a general listing of a lot of the titles. If you really want to go through all of the films one by one, you can. It will give you the title and what kind of film it is, whether it's a short film, whether it's a theatrical release, etc., and give you a release year. But this is not really what the database is for. Now, if you click on those films, it will bring you to a just very general description of the film. And a lot of times it's not going to have a whole lot of information, especially if the film is older, because some of these films have been lost. Or just don't have a lot of information, or in some instances, I just haven't finished putting everything in yet. But so if you click on Ali Sloper there, it gives you an idea of who the director and the production company is. And in newer films, it will give you lists of directors and actors and things like that. But it's not going to be a completely expanded view. That is not what this is intended for. If you want something like that, where you can basically get pictures about the film and little snippets of the film and history of the film, or a complete breakdown of all of the individual crew members and things like that. There are other databases that is for. That's things like Internet Movie Database, or TMDB, or All Movies, or Wikipedia. There are plenty of those that will expound upon multiple different levels. This database is for some other purposes. So we have included 4 tools here under Search the Database that will give you some interesting capabilities. So just let's start with the standard search the database option. You will get the drop down at the top that you will need to choose whether you want to search for somebody's name, whether you want to search for a specific title of a film, whether you want to look for a year, or whether you want to look for a specific comic title. So it's once you have chosen that, let's say we want to look for a name, and let's go with, I don't know. You can see I've got several people already in here. We'll choose the top option. We'll choose Chris Evans. You can then say, hey, I want to look for this as an actual name of a person or whether it's a role within the film. So in this instance, we're going to look for cast, crew, and creator. I will hit submit, and it will give me a single result. There's only one Chris Evans in this entire database. When we click on his name, it will give us a list of how many acting credits he has within films based on comics. So it breaks it down further when you go a little down. It's 19, but 18 of them are theatrical releases. One is a short. And then you can actually click on the plus to see if there's any other information that you can't see. There's often not going to be a lot. It just kind of depends on how wide your angle is on the screen that you're using. But then when you go down below, you can see the actual films that he was in. It starts as a list of 10, though you can expand that up to 100. Just depends, again, how much information you want on your screen at the given time. So let's say you go Snowpiercer. Well, that's not a comic book film, is it? Well, if you can click on Snowpiercer, it will bring up the film itself, but it will also, on top of everything else, give you a chance to click on the source, what it was based on. So if you click on that source, it will tell you that it's a graphic novel. It'll tell you the publisher. It will tell you the artists and the writers, the year that it was created, things like that. So it gives you just a little bit of information about that. If we instead decide to go to search the database, and let's say we want to instead search for a specific role, let's look for Thor. There are 42 Thors. Now, the reason I brought this up is when you think Thor, it's like, oh, that's one character. It is, but it's still going to look for just that series of letters. So Lex Luthor. Sometimes you're just going to have to be careful in your searches. But if you find the one that you're looking for, I can now click on Thor and see that Thor has been in 8 theatrical releases, and here they all are. So it's just kind of one of those things. Whenever you're going to do a search, there's going to be the distinct possibility that what you're searching for may pull up results that you might not expect. A little bit of sifting that goes along with that sometimes. Now that's the searching the database for people. Like I said, you can look for a production title if you want. I really like the year search because how many comic book films came out in a specific year? If you listen to our podcast, we go year by year and talk about all the comic book films. But let's say I want to look at, I don't know, 1998, and I want to see what came out in that year. Now, you have to select which types of films that you're wanting it to look for. I often just select everything and then hit submit. And in 1998, we find out that there were 6 films based on comic strips and comic books, and you can see exactly what they were and go into the specific films themselves. So that's the basic search the database functionality. But you can also go to search a year range. If you don't want to do just one year, you're doing a search for the current film. Since it's 2022, I want to know what came out in the last 10 years. So we look at 2012 to 2022. And again, I search for the type of films that I want, click the submit button, and it will give a list of all of those films by year, usually in ascending order. And you can take a look at what came out during that period of time. That one's pretty simple, not a whole lot to it. You can also see who has worked with who. We were talking about Chris Evans there before. And we can say, well, what has Chris Evans worked with Mark Ruffalo? And then again, you can choose what type of films and things. Now, you notice this has TV show, TV pilot, TV show, movie, because eventually there will be an expansion for certain things. There's not TV shows in this particular database. And like I said, we're kind of avoiding the animated stuff at the moment, but we will eventually expand on certain things. So we hit submit, and apparently Chris Evans worked with Mark Ruffalo on 5 films, and those are the 5 films. And then you can drill down a little further onto it again just by clicking on the films themselves. That will work with actors. It will work with actors and directors. In instances, once I get in the production crews of certain things, it'll work with any member of the crew or cast that is on the film, who's worked with who, where. And then my favorite part, you can go to the top 100. This is intended to be just a listing of who has been in the most productions. And again, you can kind of drill down exactly who you're talking about. If you just want to see all comic strips, comic books, whatever, you will select all of these functions and hit submit, and it will list the actors that have been in the most productions from top to bottom. Now, if you are more concerned with comic books than comic strips, well, that's easy enough. You just make sure you don't have comic strip selected, and it will ignore all productions based on a comic strip. Or I don't really care about silent films. I want more recent stuff. Well, unselect silent, and no silent films will be released in this. Or I don't care about shorts, not just silent films, but those Marvel one-shots. Those don't mean anything to me. So I want to make sure they don't show up. So those shorts won't show up. It's completely in your control what the top 100 will include, and it will potentially radically shift what is going to be shown to you. So definitely take a look at this and have some fun with it. Now, in closing, this particular database has a lot of spoiler type stuff attached to it. I mean, even if you go into IMDb, TMDB, something like that, there's a very good chance that you're going to see aspects of the plot revealed just from the names of the characters or things that have been included. So that is definitely going to be the case here, but it's even more the case because one significant distinction between my database and the other databases that you will see is I'm trying to give a realistic, well, not realistic may not be the best way to put it, but a more accurate representation of the roles that are included within the film. When you look at IMDb or TMDB, their job, their goal is to list the characters that were in the film as it was presented within the credits. So in each instance, whatever you see on the film is what they list. I mean, that's the whole point. However, that is not what I am trying to do. In many instances, they will be the same, but in some instances, the films leave things out, whether it's because they just don't think about the fact that what the characters are doing are not quite what is represented because it's a little more esoteric, or they're trying to hide some information from people so they don't get spoiled, or they do things like spell a character's name differently between the different films. So a good example of that is the X-Men films from the 2000s. The Magneto character, his name is spelled differently in the credits of all 3 films. It's not a different character. It's the same character. They just misspelled it twice. So I fix that in this database. I make sure that all of the characters that are supposed to be there are actually there, at least as well as I can. It is an ongoing struggle. There will be things that I will miss, guaranteed. I'm human. If you find anything, you can definitely let us know. We will give you a shout if we miss anything and you point it out, and we'll put it into the database. But hopefully you will enjoy the information that you can get out of this. And like I said, this is a teaser for a more robust database that we will be releasing hopefully in 2022, if not soon thereafter. Until next time, listen to the podcast. We have some fantastic material there. Take advantage of our tools on the website, and thank you for stopping by.